Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about finding your own path, your own way, and embracing the imperfection of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches, former HR professionals, and mums, Kirsty and Catherine.
We love to discuss the topics that come up time and time again for our coaching clients and which affect us all, from things like acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
Each episode ends with a question for you and us to reflect on. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Imperfect. Today we are talking about the difference between, or what has in common, I suppose, our gut instinct or intuition, if you would prefer to call it that, versus our sort of programmed responses. So, Kirsty, over to you. This was your idea, and I think you've got a huge amount to share on this subject, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, in sort of trying to come up with a framework of what we're going to talk about, there's a lot going on here, I think. But it all started because we recently did an episode on overthinking. And when we talked about that, we did touch on sort of underthinking or not thinking as being at the other end of the spectrum, and the idea of that sort of deeper, wider, more open thinking as being a good balance point. But what we didn't really mention there was that something that's often put forward as the antidote to overthinking is trusting your gut, or going with your instincts, or you're listening to your intuition. But our gut feeling was that this deserved its own episode. And so, without much overthinking, that's what it's getting. Here we are.
I love that. See what you did there.
So,
Love it.
although I think quite a lot of overthinking went into considering this topic, actually. But I mean, what do we actually mean when we're talking about that whole idea of trusting your gut or your instincts or your intuition? I mean, for me, I don't know if you'd agree, it's about having that really sort of deep, natural sense of knowing what's right for you without any need for rationalization. It's that kind of first true response which we then find ourselves quite often thinking ourselves out of.
Yeah. Possibly by overthinking it.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. It's a really interesting idea, isn't it? Because I'll be really honest, I don't often debate with myself whether something is a gut instinct or not. And I wonder if that's because I am someone who likes a lot of rationalization. If I'm being really honest, I think I like to understand where that's coming from. So it could well be that I've had the gut reaction, I've then just kind of checked it and then accepted it. But it's interesting, this idea of a gut response. It is like an instinctive one that doesn't require it, and then I perhaps add it on top, rightly or wrongly. I don't really know, but that's just kind of how it what came up
Hmm.
for me about this idea of rationalization.
Yeah, and again, because we are, of course, the same person, just with two different voices. It's a clever technical thing. We are just AI, really. No, we're not. But I I've always been something of an overthinker, and but I have always, perhaps because of that, I love the idea of having that really innate sense of knowing and being able to trust it. And lots of people are really proud of their gut instincts, aren't they? I hear people talk
Mm.
about, "Oh my gut is always right. I knew that was dodgy. I knew that wasn't going to end well. And I can always trust my instincts." And the idea of trusting your intuition rather than logic tends to be seen as sort of quite spiritually enlightened, doesn't it?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it almost like you were sort of more attuned with what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like you had this premonition and you were right. And and that's a tricky one because I'm not really sure what to make of that because the future isn't certain, no matter how much we like to prepare and predict. I think it maybe there's something in it that's maybe reassuring for people to think, ah, there we go. I thought this was going to happen and I was right. I think we also like an element of certainty and we like an element of being
Mm,
right. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to tell yourself, I know I can trust my gut instinct. That's not
no,
necessarily a bad thing.
not at all. No, I think you're right. I mean, I mean, we've talked in lots of our episodes about sort of tuning into messages and responses outside of rational thought, especially our much loved body barometer.
Hmm.
So you know, what we're doing with this episode, what we're talking about is not the idea that instinct is good or bad. It's just thinking about instinct. Can you do that? And maybe we're feeling about instinct. I don't know. But for me, the big issue here is that I believe that there is another response that we're likely to have ahead of conscious thought, as well as that sense of gut feeling. And I think that other response is the one that comes from the programming created by our experiences in life.
Hmm.
And again, I know we've touched on this idea before that we are constantly and continuously, subconsciously processing the data of what's happening to us and around us, what happens as a result of what we do. Um, our brains use that to create little shortcuts, I guess, little algorithms, if you like, that we we operate on autopilot in so many circumstances using that programming so that we can react to life as efficiently and effectively as possible. Because if we had to actually logically think out our our response and approach to every single little situation, well, we couldn't, could we?
No,
Can
it would
you
be
imagine
exhausting.
having to start from
You only have,
scratch? Yeah.
yeah, you only have so much mental capacity in a day for this kind of deliberation and decision making. So, yeah, absolutely. There are times when the shortcuts and the autopilot are absolutely handy, but it's not all the time. And I think that's kind of the message we're focusing on today is how do we respond to things, but also just checking in. Does it feel like the right response? That's ultimately what we want to get to the bottom of, isn't it? All we're trying to do in the important decisions, this is not necessarily
Yeah.
that what am I going to have for dinner, although
Oh, I don't know.
arguably that is important too.
Yes.
It's, are we coming up with what we hope is the best outcome for us? And is that being driven by perhaps a gut instinct? Is it this kind of programming? Is it a combination of the two? Um, does it matter actually where it came from, as long as it ends
Mm.
up feeling right for you, and what you might want to do to sort of check in with that before you decide and go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Finding I mean, that's what Mission Imperfect is always about, finding the ways that work best for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Man, I mean, the idea of sort of the gut feeling and the programming are not completely separate. I mean, we all start life with an instinct to avoid pain. I think pretty much everybody has that. And our programming supports that nicely by teaching us what will cause the pain. So we may early in life, hurt ourselves on things because we didn't know that they would hurt. Our instinct didn't save us from that. But going forward, that instinct that we don't want pain, combined with the programming of that cause pain, will be very helpful and useful.
Yes.
I mean, I mean, all these things in instinct and programming, it's about survival. It's about keeping us safe, isn't it?
Mhm.
And but I guess in some ways, when you're, from our earliest years, we're doing that, we're having that programming happen. We're doing it to ourselves, and it's programming ourselves to behave in ways that avoid that discomfort and or bring reward as well. It's, both facets go on. I guess it's bit like having your own inner personal protection officer who's constantly looking out for you and trying to keep you out of trouble and danger, and also probably sort of escort you into all the best clubs and everything at the same time. Um, and so it's often going to serve us really well, but there can also be some slightly less helpful aspects to it, because sometimes it can evolve in a way that is going to clash with our kind of inherent, often equally a subconscious sense of who we really are and what we want. So let's simple example, but I hope one that a lot of people can relate to. Yeah. As a child, you hate the withdrawal of affection and approval that happens when you say or do the wrong thing. Your parents are cross with you, or your caregivers are cross with you. They maybe they give you they tell you off, they give the silent treatment. You can sense their disapproval, and And you don't like that. And so, to varying extents, a child in response to that learns to do what it's told, bite its tongue to hide its feelings. In many situations, that works well. Life is all about compromise and it achieves a certain balance. But if it keeps going on, if it becomes too embedded, too extreme, then what happens later in life when you have a partner who's perhaps behaving in ways that upset you and your response is to hide your feelings, to not rock the
Mm,
boat? Or when you're at work and your manager has this amazing pet project they're pushing and you've spotted a big flaw, but you've learned not to speak up when it's something that might upset somebody. How does your programming then serve you?
yeah.
Because very likely you may see it as a gut feeling that you should not be rocking the boat. I just need to learn to deal with my partner's behavior better. Um, I'm going to do what I can to make this project work for my manager. Uh, it's not down to me to rock the boat. I need to be a bit more rational about this, a bit more sensible. I instinctively know it won't go well if I say something. But how is that really serving us?
Yeah. God, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because what actually came up for me is I thought, I wonder if the gut instinct would be, ah, you know, I can see the problem with this pet project, or I can see that my partner's behavior is not acceptable, but it got overridden by a sense of this is what it might lead to. And I will just, as I have done before, hold my tongue, not say anything, that kind of, and that's why I saw potential
Mm.
conflict. It is difficult. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, I have to be honest, it's not something I've given a huge amount of thought to, and I'm going to from now on. I'm going to be really interested to see what happens because I I don't often dwell on whether something for me is a gut instinct or a programmed response. Because to be honest, I'm the kind of person who likes to give it a bit of an examination anyway, regardless of where it's come from. Because I like to apply a bit of fact checking, a bit of reason, a bit of empathy, and a bit of questioning. Because, as a coach, that's what we do. We like to ask questions and, we
Of
do
course.
practice what we preach. So, an example is if you said to me, I've got a really great idea. Let's go cold water swimming. It's great. You'll love
Oh
it.
dear
It's
God,
really good.
why would I say that?
Maybe not the right example for you. See, we are the same person.
God.
But just say, for example, that you did. And because I know that people who do it are really, really into it. And I honestly, I believe them. I believe that it's really exhilarating. I believe it's really good for you. The thing is, I'm aware that my gut and my programmed response to that is a hard no. Because, if I run it by my filters, my fact is I disliked the cold. Some reasoning, I'd be saying yes to something that has no appeal to me. um, the empathy point of view is, yeah, I really admire people who do it. I just think I acknowledge it's not for me, and I'd be trying to make it for me, perhaps to please
Yeah.
them. And then, but this is where it gets a little bit interesting because the question, quite rightly so, might be something like, how do I know if I don't try it? Now, this one, I agree, that has got some merit. I do accept that. But the thing is, my idea of cold is probably a lot of other people's idea of, oh, this isn't too bad. Whereas for me, it'd be awful. So I'll say cold. To me, it's probably freezing. So I kind of accept that my anticipated reward from doing it is probably lower than I perceive the discomfort to be worth. And that for me is where I probably land in the middle
Mm.
by checking in, did my immediate response of no, regardless of where it came from, is that really the response that I want to give? And sort of, I'm afraid to say it probably is. It sounds like you're not going to invite me to go cold water swimming, though, Kirsty, so I don't need
No,
to
no,
worry.
you're fine. Yeah, we do not need to try this out. Phew. Um, I mean, that's a really balanced way of approaching it, and I love that. And I think that where the problems can arise with this sort of the difference between whether it's instinct or programming is you alluded to it. Sorry, Matt, my words are not coming quite right because I'm just trying to put this together. Um,
That's okay, we're following.
you're in your example, you were recognizing the aspects there, and what wasn't coming up was any sense of fear about it. That there wasn't a sense of, fear of letting other people down or being rejected or fear of, failing at it. What if I tried to get in and have to run out again? What if people won't like me if I don't do it with them? That there was none of that sort of fear response that I think is often associated with our programming,
Mm.
because our programming is, its default is to avoid discomfort and keep us safe. So there is almost certainly going to be an element of fear tied up in it. And I think for me, and yet when that's the first thing that we're sort of aware of popping up, or one of the first things, then it can be easy to mistake that for a kind of an intuitive understanding of ourselves and our situation. So, and it can go both ways in holding you back from doing something or forcing you into doing something you don't really want to. So if your sense of it was, my friends are going to reject me if I don't go with them, then you will try and convince yourself that you're actually more excited than afraid and
Yeah.
probably end up trying it. Or maybe if the whole idea does have an appeal to you, but you're scared that you're gonna, not be able to go through with it, that you're gonna get ankle deep and run for your duvet. It's
That would happen.
probably yes for me too. That's going to sort of keep you from trying something that it might turn out you could do and you'd feel great about. And those two sort of programmed responses that might feel like more of a gut instinct, actually, yeah, well, there's always fear, but actually underneath I'm excited. Actually, I'm just afraid that people reject me if I don't do it. Or, I'm there is a sense of excitement, but I'm scared I'm going to make a twat myself and not be able to do it. Whichever of those, you're allowing the programming to interfere with an underlying gut response. And your
Yeah.
approach of just taking a good look at it brilliantly deals with that. And that's what we're talking about.
Yes. Oh, well, good. I'm glad. Although then I thought maybe I've come up with a really bad example, but because you're absolutely right, fear can be really meddlesome, and yet it is also potentially close to excitement, and we can get the lines a bit blurred between the two. So let's talk a little bit more then about the sort of gut and the programmed response with a view to how can you kind of, I suppose, gently challenge them, whichever it is, to work out how to move forward in hopefully your best interests, because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, just to reiterate, neither is being put forward here as problematic in its own right. It's just about, you know, finding the ways that feel best for you and feel right for you, rather
Mm.
than always allowing what's worked in the past to guide you as we go forward. So, and this is what you've just highlighted, and in your response, really is, so if you keep thinking about your instinctive response, are you doing that in a way that increases your conviction that it's right for you, or are you actually arguing with yourself, trying to talk yourself into it or out of it? What feelings are associated with it when you think of your reaction and what that means about what you're going to do? And does that feel light or heavy, light or dark? Is there ease? Is there resistance, conviction or resignation? And even sort of superficially negative responses around fear, they can actually have lightness and ease associated with them if it's leading you into a course of action that you do intuitively know is right for you, like not getting into the cold water.
Yeah.
So saying
So actually,
no feels good if
yeah, it was
if it's
interesting because
right
the
for
word that
you.
popped out for me was resistance, because
Yeah,
I honestly there is a resistance for me for doing something like that. And I think it is coming from, I think, both places. I have, I can remember negative experiences of being bitterly cold and not enjoying it at all. And it probably has fed into my gut reaction to it now is also is something to avoid for me.
Yeah. So if that automatic response leads you to say no to something, what are the feelings associated with that no? Does it feel good to say no?
Yeah,
Or does it feel dark and heavy and
no, it doesn't.
sad and resigned? Yeah. Another thing is, and again, it doesn't label the responses that are coming up. Take that time to look at them. Is it fear? Is it excitement? Be honest with yourself about that. Um, and be specific about exactly what they relate to, because fear is obviously a very common response to being asked to do something new or different. But what exactly does that fear relate to? Now, is it fear of failure, judgment, or rejection? These things that comes up so much for so many of us, and it's surprisingly easy to assume that that is an intuitive understanding of your own limitations, or as we touched on before, a kind of instinctive understanding of what's going to happen, what other people are going to say or do, which is so often just not true. So just take a moment to look at them, ask what is it you're feeling? What does it specifically relate to in terms of the situation you're faced with? And do those feelings feel true to you in that context? Or do they feel they're coming from a place of should? I should be scared of doing this. I should be excited about doing this. I should want this. I shouldn't want this.
Mm,
And if you, as we said, that conflict that can arise between perhaps that and a truer instinct and the programming, if you feel that that's going on and you're having that conflict over how to address the situation, move forward with it, the decision to make, then maybe visualize having a conversation with kind of your inner child, that more instinctive, unfettered part of you. You sometimes you can sort of imagine yourself at a certain age, I don't know, 6 or 7, and how would she have responded? What would she be saying and wanting right now? And then you referred earlier to your inner personal protection officer, that part of you that is dedicated to making sure that your life is as smooth and pleasant as possible, that any discomfort and danger is avoided. What are they saying? And ask each of them what they want and don't want from the situation. It sounds a bit weird, but when you're putting yourself in those different positions, it can bring out a much stronger sense of what's going on in your own
yeah,
mind and help you understand which you most relate to. And in terms of resolving that inner conflict, it enables you to start looking for the common ground and the possible compromise that is going to ease that sense of going back and forth trying to make up your mind.
yeah, I totally agree. It's almost like a bit like what I was saying earlier about when I try and question it and probe it and explore it a little bit.
Yes.
You're looking for, I don't want this to feel like I have two polar opposite responses and I have to pick one. It's like, where actually might I land that could be in the middle? Or it may not be. I'm not saying you have to, carve it up and keep both sides happy, as it were. But you're looking
Yeah.
for where will I land that actually feels right for me, regardless of where either starting point was.
Mm. Yes. The potential there, not just the danger. Kind
Mm,
of back to what ifs as well, isn't it? There's always a positive what if, not just a negative. And quite straightforwardly, simply imagine the different courses of action you could take, including doing nothing with regard to the situation you're dealing with, and check in with the body barometer or all the barometers. I think we did an episode recently, we talked about an emotional barometer as well. Check in with what is going on for you in terms of your reaction to them and bring awareness to it.
yeah. It's an interesting one though, isn't it? Because I think our bodies definitely do give away certain feelings and emotions, but sometimes the body barometer will be reacting in a way that it can't actually distinguish that easily between a fear of something that is actually going to lead to growth or something that is good for us and we want it after perhaps some initial discomfort, and a
Mhm.
fear of something that just isn't for us. It's just perhaps demonstrating, exhibiting some kind of fear factor for us. And we could be tempted to go, aha, there we go. That's my sign not to do this. Whereas it could be, it's a, I understand this is a natural response for doing something, a bit like we spoke before about starting this podcast. There was a little bit of fear around it, but we also knew it was something that
Definitely.
we wanted to do, and we could have let the jittery butterflies and so on be a sign not to do it, as much as we thought actually we're going to get over that and come out the other side. So I just say, with all these things, just be a little bit aware of what might be going on underneath the really obvious thing that we might think it's saying.
Yeah, and I think that's why checking your body barometer or the emotional barometer, whatever it is, we're on all the possible courses of action
Yeah.
can be so useful because that's going to highlight the differences in that reaction, the different sense of fear or whatever the emotion is associated with both. And surprisingly, I think so counterintuitively,
Mm.
the more space you create to bring awareness to your reactions, perhaps the more likely you are to actually home in on that truest sense of instinct because I think that does tend to keep coming up for you. And often when we give ourselves that space to be aware of something and to think about it, it highlights what we can't think away. The feeling that keeps coming up, that little sense of, oh, well, what if I did do it? Or the opposite. Oh my God, I just no, this just feels all wrong. However many
Yeah.
positives you are coming up with and how much you're telling yourself you should want this and be excited, if that always is just constantly going, no, just no, I'm not getting in that cold water. I think that's telling you something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
it gets quieter the more you go on, if that initial reaction eases away, sort of becomes quieter and allows you to hear something different, then maybe it was more about the programming that was trying to serve a good purpose, but is based on the past. Whew,
Yeah.
there we go.
We've had a lot to
It
say.
is a meaty one, isn't it? I've tied
It
myself
is.
up in knots mentally today,
Yes. And it's
but
not even
it,
that late in the day.
yeah.
Let's share a couple of quotes because people have got some very interesting things to say about, particularly, I guess, on the intuition side of things. I think it's one of those subjects where you'll get people who are really in favor of it. And I hope we've been clear that it's not that we're not in favor. I think we're always in favor of have a listen and then check in with it, see what it's telling you. But let's just share a couple of these of what some others have said about it. This is a particularly nice one. It's you have to leave the city of your comfort and go into the wilderness of your intuition. What you'll discover will be wonderful. What you'll discover is yourself. And that's by somebody called Alan Alda.
Well, yes, one of my heroes. He was in MASH, which was a brilliant program. And David Lynch said, intuition is the key to everything in painting, filmmaking, business, everything. I think you could have an intellectual ability, but if you can sharpen your intuition, which they say is emotion and intellect joining together, then a knowingness occurs. And I love that idea of intuition as that joining together of emotion and intellect.
Mm.
It, it's not something that has to be completely sort of airy-fairy, but nor is it something that is utterly rooted in logic. It's a perfect blending. I think that's rather lovely.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, we haven't
So,
really spoken about the logic side, have we? But yeah, it's true. Often our gut response is just a very natural response. And I think because right at the start, when we talked about rationalizing, I think that's because I like logic. That it's like I have to sort of test it with that logic. That's just made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I personally believe that giving space to listen to what's going on for you, if it's true intuition, it's going to stay there, and you're just going to hear it more strongly.
Yeah.
I think it's very
Yeah.
hard to talk yourself out of intuition without realizing that you're doing it. It's that inner conflict and that goes on. And the more you give yourself space to tune into that, the more likely you are to actually be true to your sense of intuition and instinct and be able to strip away the programming and do that in a rational way that supports your instincts.
Yeah. Lovely. So, do we have a question,
A
Kirsty?
question. Of course, we have a question, Catherine. When do we not? Um, so, where do you think your programming most blocks or trumps your instincts or gut or intuition? And what will you do to change this? I'll give my answer. Um, so, the thing that most blocks or trumps me in with my trusting my instinct because of my programming, I think is taking myself seriously. Because I grew up in an environment where Mickey taking was rife. It certainly wasn't always a bad thing, but it did seem to be a bit never ending. If you tried something new and did badly at it, it'd be laughed at it forever. It became the ongoing family joke. Your behavior, your expressions, your appearance, they're all fair game. And if you showed hurt feelings as a result of that, you either got sort of criticized and told you couldn't take a joke, or there'd be more winding up because that became funny. Um, so it meant that I tended to avoid trying new things unless I had quite a strong sense I might do all right at it. Um, and I have an ongoing tendency to laugh at myself before anyone else can. And although I've got a lot better at it, for a long time I did tend to hide my feelings when I was hurt or upset. I didn't know how to address them without feeling that I was leaving myself open to more ridicule or people getting annoyed. So I, if I had an instinctive urge that I did want to try something new, I tended to dismiss it, talk myself out of it. And, any sort of gut feeling that I had something to say that was worth hearing was just be no, 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 keep quiet. It ends badly. And I have to say that recently I've noticed how much that still shows up in written communication in particular, posts and emails that I do from a coaching perspective. I'll often rewrite things if I think they're too serious. Make sure that I add in something that I at least think is funny or self-deprecating. So what I'm going to do is stop doing that. If it happens naturally, fair enough. But if I have to stop and go back to put something in, I'm not going to do it. How about you?
Interesting. So, um, it took me a moment to think of this one, and then it was really obvious that this was the one because I have said it before, but a long time ago, and it's
Oh,
about following the rules. Um, I was never a rule breaker as a child. I was very much follow the rules, do as you're told, that kind of thing. And it took me to the age of 39 to break what I saw as a rule, an unwritten rule, one that I thought existed, that I was allowed to step away from my hard worked for career in HR. And it wasn't throwing it away, I was bringing it with me to the next part that I was allowed to do. And it's interesting, I still find some of the rules, as I would call them, in the self employed space a bit baffling, particularly when it comes to social media games, play by the rules and
mm.
you'll be rewarded. Um, but maybe I've just got a little bit rebellious at last because that hasn't come naturally to me. Maybe it's being in my 40s, caring a bit less about the rule book. Maybe I trust myself a bit more to make decisions, and that will have come about through coaching, undoubtedly. And that there are many to make now that I'm in charge, for want of a better expression, of my business. Or maybe it's just a bit of all of those things together. That's my that's my take on it, on following the rules.
wow. So are you going to be consciously breaking rules going forward?
It's an interesting one. I just think I have to think to myself, where have they even come from? Do they matter? Do they actually exist in the first place? And do I care about them? Because I just think before it was a case of they exist, or at least I think they exist, and I will follow them. And now I'm a bit like, maybe I won't.
Yeah, it's just that giving yourself the space to see the reality of the situation rather than that programmed, I have to do this, I have to be like this,
Yeah,
I can't do that. Makes all the
exactly.
difference.
It really does. So we're just going to recap that question for everybody. So where do you think your programming most blocks or trumps your instincts, gut, intuition, and what will you do to change this? So hope you found that an interesting episode, a little bit about gut instinct and our programming and the role that they both play validly in our experiences and our decision making, and how we can perhaps sort of double check them and see how we can make the progress that feels right for us, which is all we can ever do imperfectly, right, Kirsty?
Yes,
A bit like this
perfectly
recording, the tech has
imperfectly.
been a bit imperfect for us today, but hopefully it will be behaving again next week for another episode, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect.
Please visit the show notes for details on how to contact us and for any resources we may have on the topic discussed.
Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.